going on, Cheeseheads? Welcome into the Packers Report. I am your host, Joey Petersen. We're going to start by shedding some light on our subscriber battle with our Bears channel right here at Chat Sports. They are beating us in subscribers for the week, but it is a really close race, and I'm going to talk to you guys. Okay, listen in, lock in. If you guys hate the Chicago Bears, if you hate Chicago's Bears now, then go ahead, hit that sub button, join us right here on the Packers Report for daily news, rumors, everything else surrounding the Green Bay Packers. Coming up on today's show, we're going to look into a little bit of Tee Higgins and should the Packers sign him in the upcoming offseason and when NFL free agency starts. And then on the back half, we're going to look at some wide receiver trade targets if Tee Higgins' price is a little too high for the Packers. Let's start by looking at the offseason. This is what Ben Solak had to say. He said, "While I love the Packers' versatility in the wide receiver room when it is healthy," great little addition there, "they could use a clear wide receiver one who can take over games with consistent 8+ target outings." And when you look specifically into this wide receiver depth chart in this wide receiver room, you see some awesome names. You see some awesome faces in Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jayden Reed, all of those guys who had pretty solid season when you look at the stats at it, right? 46 catches for Doubs, 601 yards, 4 touchdowns. Watson on a little bit of a shorter season, 620 yards, 29 catches, 2 touchdowns, and Jayden Reed at 857 total. But the question, like was posed in that quote I just read, is there a wide receiver one in this room? Or is this a wide receiver room just full of a bunch of guys who would be a wide receiver two on any given roster? I think that is a genuine and legit question that this front office, that this team needs to have on their minds going into the draft, going into free agency, going into possibly making some trades this offseason. And LaFleur needs to ask himself, do we need a guy who is an outright, no questions asked, no doubt about it, wide receiver one on this roster? Okay, I need you to do something for me, and if you want the Packers to sign a wide receiver in free agency, I want you to like the video. Okay, this is how you're going to cast your vote for me in the I guess not the comment section, but just on today's video. If you want him to sign a wide receiver, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button. Ben Solak went on to keep talking, and he actually gave his bold prediction for the upcoming season for the Packers, the upcoming offseason. And he says the bold prediction is to sign Tee Higgins. Here's a little bit more about what he had to say. He said, "Expect him to be in the Tee Higgins hunt. But if getting him gets too expensive for them, they could package someone like Romeo Doubs, who will be in the final year of his rookie deal in 2025, to grab a frustrated star from another team. Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, I bet on the latter." Let's talk a little bit more about Tee Higgins before we get into either of those guys. You know, he wants to cut ties with Cincinnati. This is per reports. He played on the franchise tag this last year, $21.8 million. And when I look at all the available wide receiver free agents, in my mind and in pretty much everybody's mind across the National Football League, Tee Higgins is the best of the bunch. He just unfortunately happens to be on the same team as maybe the best wide receiver in football, in Jamar Chase. Okay, so he's a guy who his entire career, he's been a wide receiver too, but I have firm belief that if he comes into Green Bay, he's the wide receiver one on this roster. You look at what he did in just 12 games. In just 12 games with Cincinnati, he would have led this team in yards. He would have led this team almost double in touchdowns, caught 73 receptions. And again, that's with having to share the rock with a guy like Jamar Chase. And I would love it. Okay, I think Tee Higgins is going to be a star. I'm really excited to see where Tee Higgins goes in free agency and what he can do as a wide receiver one. But I just fear the price is a little bit too high. My opinion, and talking to a bunch of sources here at Chat Sports, guys who cover the team, cover the Bengals every single day like we do right here on the Packers Report, they seem to think he's going to want somewhere around $30 million. And as the cap space for the Packers sits right now, it's at $43.98. So just about $44 million. So you could afford it, but that's taken what? 66.66% of your budget going into this offseason? Yes, I passed math in high school. And the thing about the price around the entirety of it is, you know, you got some guys in free agency like a Josh Myers, a TJ Slayton, as Isaiah McDuffie, both the Erickson, Stokes, and Wilson that you're going to need to sign. you're going to want to sign. You're going to want to keep those guys around. That is the price you pay for having a team that wins 11 games. You tend to want to keep those guys in the building. And like I said earlier, I believe Higgins most likely wants around $30 million. Because when you look at the wide receiver contracts that are current in the NFL for the highest, I believe that Tee Higgins looks at what Brandon Ayuk just got last offseason from the 49ers, $30 million, and says, I'm better than Brandon Ayuk, right? I can produce more than Brandon Ayuk can. I'm a more dynamic receiver based on my size, based on my catch radius than Brandon Ayuk is. I should get paid more than him. I should get paid more than Jaylen Waddle. I should get paid more than a lot of those guys. I think Tee Higgins, he bet on himself this year, playing on the franchise tag. Obviously, he didn't have a choice. He got franchise tagged. But still, I think he's going to want a lot of money, and I think it's a little bit too much for what I would want Green Bay to pay in this offseason. Chime in for me. Should the Packers sign Tee Higgins? Give me a yes, give me a no in the comment section down below. You let me know right now. And while you're down there, on your way back up to the video, go ahead and hit that sub button, okay? Keep helping us grow. We're currently sitting at 397 subscribers. We are 603 away from 1,000. We're doing the race to 1,000 with ourselves right here on the channel, trying to grow as much as we can. We need you to help us out, so subscribe for daily everything on your Green Bay Packers. Let's talk about some trade targets. We're going to talk about the ones that Ben Solak gave in that article, starting with my main man, Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson is a little bit of an interesting topic of discussion because he's had an incredible start to his career. Obviously, was the Rookie of the Year a couple years ago in New York. And then this past year had a little bit of a frustrated stint with the Jets with every single thing that happened. And that's why this leads me to believe, and leads me to say, I think the Aaron Rodgers experiment, and I know we know a good thing about that right here on this channel, but I think the Aaron Rodgers experiment killed Garrett Wilson. Killed Garrett Wilson as a New York Jet. I think he's ready to go. I think he's ready to get out of there. I just think he's ready for a change of scenery, and that could possibly be Green Bay, but I think more likely it's in Denver. I don't want to get too caught up in the Instagram screenshots or who's following who or who doing what on social media, because a lot of times it doesn't necessarily lead to what happens. But also it's worthy to note that Garrett Wilson followed a lot of Broncos players this past week on Instagram. Zach Wilson, Jonathan Cooper, J.P. Locke, Nick Bonito, and Bo Nix. Kind of a weird time to follow 5 random guys from a different NFL team. So that's kind of why I think Garrett Wilson's probably going to go somewhere else. He also would be a lot to give up trade value-wise because he's so young. And that's what leads us to a different receiver who's still young, not as young, but I still think could come in here and be a bona fide wide receiver one, and that's DK Metcalf, okay? He had a little bit of a down year in his standards, right? Didn't get to 1,000 yards like he's done the past 2 seasons, but he also didn't play every single game. He was dealing with injury in a little bit, but he still logged 66 catches on 108 targets and still found the end zone 5 times. But if you look at the contract, take a little bit of a deeper dive into it. For Seattle, he's a $31.8 million cap hit. Okay, if he's cut before June 1st, they'd save $10.8 million. If he's cut after June 1st, they've saved $13 million. Now, they're not going to cut him. They're going to do what I believe Green Bay is going to do with Jair Alexander, and that's if they trade him $12.52 million they'll save, and then the new team owes only $18 million. Okay, so this is a trade that I've seen kind of floated around, and I concur with this trade idea. Packers receive DK Metcalf. Seahawks get a 2nd and a 3rd round pick in 2025. And honestly, guys, I would think about it. I don't know if I'm chomping at the bit for that trade just because of the small injury bug that he kind of dealt with this past year, and just because he's kind of getting up there a little bit in age. But guys, if that option's still there, it's definitely what I'm thinking about. And in my opinion, Metcalf seems like a much more likely option for this team in 2025. Pick one for me out of those 2 guys. Is it Garrett Wilson? Is it DK Metcalf? Which one would you rather have on this Packers team next season? If it is Wilson, give me a GW down below. And if it's DK, go ahead. Throw me a DK. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. This has been an awesome week covering the green and gold. So appreciative of every single one of you who've joined us, who've liked, who've subscribed, who's commented. Everything you do on this channel means a lot. It helps a lot, and we appreciate it. So if you haven't already, if you made it to the end of this video, make sure to go down below, hit that sub button.